gripping humanitarian crisis. The Middle East. Our next speaker calls on us to play a role in the education of refugee children there. Rama was raised in Syria and Saudi Arabia and is now based in Dubai, supporting socially minded entrepreneurs of the Arab world through her firm, Baraka Ventures. Please welcome Rama to the stage.
Would you spare a cup of coffee if you knew that it could end radicalism? What if I told you that by giving up 1 cup of coffee a month and putting that $5 towards refugee higher education, together we could shut down a refugee camp? Granted, it may take 60,000 of us, but in a world of almost 8 billion people, that's a handful of coffee drinkers giving up 12 lattes a year. Peanuts. But for the 600 million youth impacted by conflict worldwide, it's a chance at a life. It gives them the skills and the education they need to become financially independent and guard themselves against radical ideology. I've worked for 12 years in the Middle East, and I've started a dozen tech and social ventures to support Arab youth who are in conflict zones like Palestine and Iraq and Syria and North Africa. The successful fundraising campaigns that we did for youth led an organization in Lebanon to invite me to help them figure out how they can raise more funds for youth higher education. There I met Melek. With her small team of volunteers, they had raised funds for 200 scholarships for Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, and they wanted to do a lot more. Melek told me that refugee youth were disconnected from the rest of the world by their physical environment. And that if she could help one young lady go through college and graduate and mentor her to get a job, that one young lady can get her entire family of 7 out of a refugee camp. Having never been in one, I couldn't comprehend the impact that the environment had on young people. My 2 children had an idyllic life in Northern Virginia and then Dubai. They went to schools, rode their bikes, made friends, and played team sports. And everywhere else that I've worked in the Middle East seemed to offer a reasonable environment for young people. So on that same trip, I visited Burj al-Barajneh, a Palestinian refugee camp that was set up in Lebanon 69 years ago. The tents that you see transformed to a densely packed concrete jungle. Many of the rooms or homes we visited couldn't get any sunlight or airflow, so mildew was growing on the walls. A family of 11 was living in a single room. And the narrow alleyways that we took that were filled with trash were also covered with exposed electrical wiring. 40 people had died that year that I visited from electrocution, just going to their homes. Young people were hanging out in these narrow alleyways, not at school and not at jobs, because the unemployment rate in refugee camps was at 60%. And so kids saw no hope in going on to get a degree. And despite these terrible conditions, the camp was very peaceful. We were walking around at 11 p.m., not concerned for our safety. Most refugees, the majority, are peaceful, but they're also very vulnerable. And all it takes is one family crisis. The mom of this young man can get ill, and that would maybe change his mind about accepting an offer from a radical recruiter who promises him medical relief for his mother or a better future life. Having seen that, I made higher education my focus, and I started a program with Melek's organization. Jana was the first to join our program. We put her profile online, and quickly got her crowdfunded by a group of women who also offered to mentor her online. Within no time, Jana was working with a social publisher with a virtual internship with a social publisher in the States. And soon she graduated, and she's been helping other young women follow in her footsteps. The work that I did with Malak and a number of other organizations helped a couple of thousand young people through offering virtual mentorship, that human connection, and giving online internships. With a little bit of crowdfunding, these people, young refugees, were becoming independent. But that was a drop in the bucket, because when the Syrian war broke out, it displaced 11 million people. 450,000 of them were in the university, and their education was disrupted. Because it was my place of birth, I went to visit a refugee camp in Lebanon to see what I could do. And nothing I had seen would have prepared me for the tragedy that had befallen my fellow countrymen. As far as the eye can see, tents filled the Bekaa Valley. And as many as 8 people were packed in one tent, earning or not earning, getting a stipend of $100 a month. That wasn't enough for a family, and so everybody over 12 had to work. Kids were working in sweatshops for 12-hour days, making flip-flops. Professionals, accountants, and teachers were now working in farm fields and factories, earning $2 a day. The situation was pretty desperate for most refugees that I met. And the only connection that young people had to the rest of the world were their mobile phones. On that same visit, I met Amir, a young man, Syrian from Homs. He and his family took the journey of death. On feet, they walked 64 miles from Homs to the Bekaa Valley. More people had died than were living in that journey. And when Amir was telling me the story of how he saw his uncle and cousin killed in a landmine explosion, there was no expression on his face. It was haunting. It was as if he was talking about somebody else. That expressionless face reminded me of when I was younger and I had a physical trauma. In order to escape my fear, I disconnected from my emotions. But by disconnecting from fear, I also disconnected from love and all other emotions that would go on to make me a normal functioning human being. And it took a very long time for me to be able to establish that connection again. Amir and the 100,000 other Syrians who were university aged fled their countries in hopes of a better life, only to find that they're in host countries that have very expensive universities and very high unemployment rates. They couldn't afford to work to pay for their own education. Enrollment for Syrians dropped from 20% down to 5% in universities. And they're always told that they're going to go back, but the reality is they cannot. For Syrian refugees, it's been over 5 years, Iraqis over 10, Afghanis over 15, and Palestinians have been out of their homeland for over 60 years. And this wasn't just an Arab refugee problem. Less than 1% of refugees worldwide have access to funding for higher education. So the nagging question that kept me up at night is how could we scale the work that we did with Malak's organization to support the 450,000 Syrian youth worldwide without access to university education, or the 600 million youth who are impacted by conflict. We knew that they were connected to the world through their mobile phones. And from the work that we did with Malak, we knew that hope gave them something to look forward to, an internship or a college degree. And with some funding, we were able to support them. So, along with a group of coders, refugee coders, and young people like Jana, we put together all of these features in an app. Now, I know that sounds like it's oversimplifying the problem, but this was a solution that they came up with. They wanted to connect to the rest of the world through a social network that was their own, to allow people to see them, read their stories, hear about their lives, And also to allow these people who are on the network to offer them mentorship, internships online, or on a day where these people felt sufficiently caffeinated, give up that $5 in lieu of their education. edSeed is in its infancy, and we're hoping that we can grow it. If we can get 6,000 young people on it and 60,000 who would support them, we could shut down a refugee camp. With your help, we could do a lot more. Because the original challenge is how we can fund the 600 million youth out there living in conflict and support them to become a part of a more peaceful world. And the opportunity is for us to offer them hope, human connection, love, and support for their education, and the funding they need to join peaceful global citizens. Are you with me?